Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I'll be running through my favourite wildcard ahead of Game Week 6. Welcome back to another video on my channel. If you did enjoy today's wildcard draft video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and hit subscribe to the channel. In the meantime though, let's start discussing Game Week 6 wildcard. I think it is the most popular request I've had all season long so far to make a wildcard draft video, and it's also a wildcard in which a lot of it picks itself. It's a very strong week for wildcarding because I think there are a lot of good form picks. There's also some fixture swings coming around about now, and with the emergence of DEFCON, defensive contributions, there are also some picks that maybe kind of pick themselves in certain positions. So without further ado, let's not waste any time. I'm going to try and keep this short and snappy. This is my full wildcard draft for Game Week 6. Lots of template picks in there, I'm sure, but let me walk you through each of them as to why I think they are still good picks, despite how popular they might be. Triple Arsenal on a wildcard, I think, is something I definitely want to do. I've gone with double defense and one attacking option, that being Gyökeres. I would love to include Saka on a wildcard, but considering he's just coming back from injury and he has had a few setbacks over the last year or so, it would be quite risky to include him, especially considering he doesn't have or shouldn't have penalties now. It looks like that's been handed over to Gyökeres. So I've gone with double defense. Arsenal defensively are the best team in the league and have been for a number of seasons now. And once Newcastle is out of the way, they've got a great fixture run where I'm expecting clean sheets to start getting racked up quite quickly. So Raya alongside Gabriel, for me, makes a lot of sense. Now, moving down, I've got double City as well. That seems fairly obvious considering they've got Burnley next up. Haaland has been in sensational form, although it is worth noting this is his slowest start to a Premier League season with 6 goals in 5 games, which is kind of ridiculous. But I've gone with Haaland nevertheless, a great captaincy option against Burnley. Brentford after that, I think it's Everton the week after. So it's a good little run of fixtures for City, and everything is funneling through him at the moment. He's scoring a very high proportion of Man City's goals at the moment. Everything is funneling through him. Reinders is that cheap budget option that you don't need to start every single week, but I think he is good enough to start in pretty much any week, as we saw against Arsenal. Burnley at home for him is a good fixture. I'm expecting attacking returns over the next 3 game weeks, and he has been locked in for 90 minutes from the start of the season, so he seems like a fairly safe Man City pick, of which there just aren't that many as well. I mean, Foden could be someone that I would look at including on a wild card. He's been pretty good recently, but then was quite anonymous against Arsenal and got hooked at around 65-66 minutes, so it's never far away from him coming back out of the side. And the same could be said of Bob, Doku, pretty much every other Man City attacking option you could pick from, whereas at least Reinders, for the time being at least, looks like a player that is fairly secure for minutes. He also picked up DEFCON against Arsenal, so he can do the defensive work as well. Let's focus on the rest of the defense for a second. All of the other 4 outside of Gabriel, who I've already discussed, are defensive contribution monsters. Now, I think there's been a real shift towards DEFCON this season. Whether we like it or not, it's here, and it's here for the season. And a lot of people are disgruntled by that, let's say, and it might not be the best addition to the game for some people. However, points are points, and these 4 players so far are hitting well above a 50% hit rate on defensive contribution. That's 2 extra points in most of the games. Now, even if all of these 4 players drop down to about 50% hit rate across the season, so they'd be regressing a little bit, that's another 40 points on top of what they'd normally be scoring across a season. With good fixtures and the fact that these guys can also keep clean sheets, they're all in decent defences. Alderete, even at Sunderland, they've been very good defensively, 1.11 XGC per 90 up to this point. So all 4 of these can keep clean sheets on top of defensive contributions. Senesi, for example, has been hitting 9-pointers whenever they've gotten a clean sheet so far. So all of these picks are going to tick along. They're going to churn out good points with good fixtures. And even without any attacking returns, it's going to be pretty hard for any other defenders to be matching them this season. So let's say they do get a 50% hit rate of defensive contributions across a season. That's 40 extra points, or 38 points to be pedantic. That's the equivalent of 13 extra assists or 6.5 goals for a defender. Now, not many defenders are going to be able to get that kind of return rate in terms of attacking contributions. So DEFCON, it is a bit boring. It is a slower churn of points, but across a season, it's more likely to come out on top of most of the defenders. There will be one or two defenders that beat that, but picking them is going to be quite hard work. So all of these four I really like. Tarkowski against West Ham, who have been poor from set pieces, I back him for a goal in that. Senesi has been churning out points. Same with Anderson, and Alderete would be my favourite of the 4 million defenders right now. You could look at a Leeds defender, Rodon, Goodmanson as well. But Alderete, since he's come back into the side, looks very secure for minutes, very good on the defensive contribution, and does get forward for set pieces as well. So I like this combination. Senesi and Anderson both rotate pretty well over the long term as well. So for me, it is boring, but they are going to score a lot of points. And whether we like it or not, DEFCON is here for the season. Moving into midfield, Caicedo is another player that is basically just taking advantage of defensive contributions. A bit like with the defenders, if he can maintain this kind of hit rate, he's currently getting an 80% hit rate of DEFCON. It will regress a little bit. Let's say he gets 50 to 60%. That's, again, another 40 points on top of what he'd already be getting this season. That is without taking into consideration any clean sheet points, any bonus points, or any attacking returns, of which he will get a few of each of those. He would still be on track for something like 160 points across a season. His floor in most game weeks is 4 points. Over 38 game weeks, that is nearing 160 points. So it is so boring, but he is going to churn out points. And in this draft, he would be my 8th attacker as well. So I wouldn't need to start him every single week. But whenever I did have an injury or a suspension in my front line, I could bring him in and obviously just play him any given game week and never really need to take a hit, because I can always rely on him getting a 4-point baseline. So a hit is very unlikely to pay off anywhere else in my side, and it just helps me save a transfer throughout the season. So boring, but again, it's going to churn out points. Now, if you didn't have the budget, then one thing I might recommend is downgrading Caicedo to maybe a Dewsbury Hall, maybe a stack, little bit of a budget saving here, but this wildcard draft should be fairly affordable. Looking at the rest of my midfield, I've got Bruno and Ndai in there, both 90-minute men on penalties, and both are capable of hitting defensive contributions. I think they've both hit it twice this season so far. Ndai is surprising. I wasn't expecting him to ever really hit DEFCON, but he has surprised me pleasantly. I've had him in my own team, and he's been churning out points, getting assists, getting goals. His open play goal threat is not half bad either, and he hasn't picked up a penalty yet. When he does get that, that's another potential route to points for him. And Everton look like a much better attack than they have done in recent seasons. And again, West Ham is a low-hanging fruit for game week 6 in particular. Bruno Fernandes, I think he's proven it already this season that all he really needs is 1 goal, 1 assist, and he's already looking at near enough a double-digit haul. And at 9 million, that's pretty rare. So again, 90 minutes on set pieces, on penalties. I think for the price, it's very good value for money. And he's got a good couple of fixtures coming around the corner. Brentford, then Sunderland after that. He would be in my wildcard draft if at all possible. Rounding off my 15, I've got 2 form picks in there. That is Semenyo and João Pedro. I'm finding it quite hard to go without either of them on a wildcard. I think Semenyo's just been too good to ignore. The fixtures are still good. And although he doesn't have the benefit of penalties necessarily when Kluivert comes back in, he is or has already taken 1 in the league this season. So we know whilst Kluivert isn't starting, at least he might be next in line to take the next penalty. He's also got very good open play goal threat and has a very good shot volume. In fact, one of the very best in the league. So again, even at 7.7 million, I would find it currently quite difficult to go without him on a wild card. Same goes for João Pedro. I think whilst Cole Palmer is still struggling with injury doubts, it's quite hard to include him on a wild card. I think if he hadn't have come off early in the Man United game, I would have been more tempted to include him, and maybe that would have come at the expense of a Bruno Fernandes, for instance. But given that he came off early, Maresca's comments recently saying that they're managing him week to week, I do think it's just too much of an ongoing risk considering he's 10.4 million. If he was any cheaper than that, it might be a risk worth taking. But when you've got João Pedro there, who's putting up good data, getting 90 minutes and playing in the same attack, I think it's just worth going with João Pedro right now. As boring as it may sound, and as template as it is, I think he's just going to keep churning out points whilst Cole Palmer is still in and out of the side. And Chelsea's fixtures from game week 8 all the way through to game week 12 look absolutely sensational. So I do want a bit of Chelsea coverage. And although Caicedo is in my lineup, I wouldn't really count him as a Chelsea attacker. So I would want João Pedro in there just to balance that out a little bit and give me a little bit more goal threat going into what is a very good attackable run of fixtures. So that is my wildcard draft 15 and probably my favourite wildcard at the moment. There are a couple of omissions, no Liverpool in there, no Salah, of course, and I've already mentioned no Foden, no Palmer, no Saka. There's also no room for Spurs defence, which has been very good so far. And the next couple of fixtures are good as well. So if you don't have the funds for a Tarkowski, then you could look at downgrading him to a Van de Ven or a Romero. I do like both of those. Or if you are looking maybe 1 week into the future, you could also look at Newcastle defence, which again has been very, very good so far this season. Not a great game week 6 fixture against Arsenal, but once that's out of the way, their fixtures aren't too bad. And they have proven to be one of the best defences in the league as well. So I would be tempted to include someone like a Dan Burn or a Livramento on a wild card. But I think that would be a pick that comes into my thinking a little bit more once game week 6 is out the way. If you can store them on the bench for a week, then again, a good pick on a wild card in game week 6 as well. Okay, then, so I knew I'd get a few questions about, well, where is Mo Salah? Because he's still always going to be a relevant FPL pick. So I've also created a draft where I've squeezed in both Salah and Haaland into the same 15. There have, of course, been sacrifices I've had to make, and I do prefer wildcard draft number 1 for balance. But I think Salah is always going to be a relevant FPL option. He's not going to stay as quiet as he has done so far. And even though he has had a relatively quiet start to the season, he still picked up 4 attacking returns in the opening 5 game weeks. So he's just never going to be a bad option. And I'm sure at times this season, we're going to want him probably alongside Haaland, if at all possible. So let's take a look at what that might look like on a wild card. Now, straight away, Gyökeres has been downgraded to Foster. That is a big saving. And honestly, Foster would probably be a benched player most weeks, but he's gotten off to a decent start so far this season. And at 5 million, he might not be bad value for money. That isn't the only downgrade, though. I have, of course, had to make downgrades in my goal and in defense. I've downgraded Raya to Petrovic, which is a compromise considering I'm now on double Bournemouth defense rather than double Arsenal defense. Bournemouth defence has been good, so it's a compromise I'd be willing to make to have Salah in there instead, but I wouldn't be expecting as many points out of Petrovic or double Bournemouth defence as I would out of double Arsenal, considering Arsenal's fixtures over the next few game weeks. One final downgrade is I have sacrificed Tarkowski and put in Van de Ven. That saved me, I think, another 0.8 million, which has made it affordable for me to upgrade Bruno Fernandes, who I do really like on a wild card, but I do prefer Salah. You're always going to prefer Salah to pretty much any other FPL pick. So if you prefer Salah that much and you think all of these downgrades are worth it to have both Salah and Haaland, and you think that over the next few game weeks, they're both going to be hitting a very high rate of returns, then maybe this wildcard draft is more up your street. Now, as we reach the end of today's video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. I do apologize if this was a little bit template, and I tried to put in some more differential picks if I could, but every time I tried to do so, it just felt wrong, and it just felt like I was almost lying to you on who I would pick on a wild card, because as template as it is, I think at least draft number 1, if I go back to that very quickly, this would be what I would wildcard towards right now. And I'm very tempted to do it myself. I've got the exact funds in the bank to do it. And although I actually quite like my team for this week, knowing that this is exactly affordable and knowing the fact that DEFCONs are going to be massively impactful, you've got penalty takers in there, you've got form picks in there, I am really tempted to hit the button. And I know it's a little bit template, there aren't many differentials in there, but just wildcarding in of itself is probably going to be enough of a margin of gain for you to make it worthwhile. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if there are any differentials you would try and squeeze into here that I haven't talked about at some point during this video. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back in a day or two with my team selection ahead of Game Week 6.